again, friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name's Amy, and I'm glad you decided to join me for chapter 40 of the book that I wrote, Legends, Orbs of the Elements. I hope you're all having a wonderful Friday. We've made it to another weekend. Yay! Can you believe that after this weekend, the next week is only 1 week away from Christmas? Can you believe it? Where did the time go? Also, 1 week to Hanukkah too, not to disclude anybody that is watching that celebrates Hanukkah. I always forget to include that, but I hope you guys are getting excited for Hanukkah too. Yeah. So without further ado, let's just jump right into this. And before we forget, if you are interested in learning where to purchase this book, I will be leaving all that fun information at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. Now, let's just plunge back into this adventure. Chapter 40. The following day, Castilia and Leon started their journey to the Northern Highlands. They had rested a couple of days to give their horses a much-needed rest and gather up the supplies they would need. Leon kept hearing the call of many birds on the many hours he and Castilia were on horseback. He, at first, ignored it because it was faint and he thought nothing of it. He glanced ahead and saw the toll booth up ahead. He tilted his head up and caught a glimpse of the sky. Oh my. He halted his horse. Castilia did likewise. The sky swarmed with birds ranging from a large variety of blackbirds, including crows, ravens, magpies, starlings, all heading in the same direction. Leon glanced at Castilia for an explanation. He called the birds to his fortress. Don't worry, he won't use them on us. Yet my guess is that they are part of his battle plans. Come, we're almost to the border, Castilia said. Leon gave a little punch in her arm, and she looked back at him and raised an eyebrow. That's not a comforting thought. Why could he bring, I don't know, bunnies or something, Leon said in a sarcastic tone of voice. Castilia tried to hide a smile and failed. She shook her head as she now rode ahead and paid the toll booth fare. The toll booth collector snarled, but said nothing as he let them through the border to the Northern Highlands. As they crossed, the wind blew fiercely. As they continued to ride, Leon surveyed that the weather was much cooler than that of the other territories. The landscape was covered with rugged terrain and with many mountain ranges that rose like looming colossal giants protecting the land. The trails, Leon observed, were not as worn from use like the others that they had ridden upon on this quest. At one point, Leon had to dismount his horse and pull out his hooded cloak. As Leon climbed back on his steed, he took note that the horses seemed on edge. Both Leon and Castilia had to reassure their steeds a few times. Once the horses were slightly calmer, Castilia used her hand and pointed off in the distance many leagues away. What an eerie and spectacular sight it was, although he couldn't make out the intricate details of the fortress of Nero lay. The strong walls were cut into the very heart of the mountain. The parapets were well guarded. The flags of Nero billowed proudly in the strong wind. Nero had chosen the location for his fortress well. Castilia turned to Leon, who still had his eyes fixed upon the place they would eventually have to approach. She punched his arm playfully to get his attention. Come, we must find shelter for the night. Leon nodded, but his eyes returned to the outline of the fortress. They moved at a slow pace. Castilia admitted that she was not as familiar with this territory as she was with the other three territories that they had previously visited. The land of the land of the least populated as well, which made things more complicated because they couldn't as easily read where previous travelers may have taken refuge for the night or made camp. This being Nero's domain, he had the advantage. She knew all he had to do was use his magic to find them, and he would know where they were located. That's the reason Castilia wanted to get out of the wide open tundra. Nero and Blinken would have a harder time locating them if they were covered by a natural cave or rock formation, because there was no doubt in her mind that the two of them, and even Rifa, would try to kill them. They climbed up a rocky, uneven surface to a rock face. It was no picnic for the horses, who both reared up and were more spooked than any time before. Leon decided to get off his horse. He told Castilia to stay with the horses while he scoped out a place to stay for the night. He was gone for a long time. Castilia noticed Little Boy didn't look so good. It could be the evil presence that she and Leon felt too. She crouched down to him and huddled around to keep him warm as possible. She had taken out her cloak and was going to wrap it around herself tightly when she had an idea that maybe Little Boy was cold as well. She now wrapped her cloak around the two of them. This small amount of body heat appeared to improve the look of the reptile. Castilia smiled a small smile to herself. Castilia was debating if she could risk it and go looking for him, when at that moment she heard footsteps and Leon appeared. He was out of breath and his cheeks were bright red from the combination of the wind, cold, and exertion. "Come, there is a covered ledge not far." Castilia got up and nodded. Leon took a few things off the horses and put them in his backpack, so it would make things easier for the horses, so they carried less weight. The two companions walked for about 20 minutes before Leon stopped and pointed. They quickly set to work setting up camp and started a cooking fire. He found some large boulders and, with Castilia's help, made a rock barrier so the wind couldn't come in as far. It was a large ledge, and thus the horses were also granted a reprieve from the wind. Both Castilia and Leon unbridled them and rubbed them down. The horses were free to roam as they liked. As soon as the cooking fire was started, Little Boy lay next to it and eventually fell fast asleep. The horses lay down next to each other to keep warm. Castilia got the food ready while Leon saw to getting water and beds made for them when they would sleep. They ate in silence. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence, more a feeling of reflection and the task ahead. It was coming down to this. All they had to do was somehow find an air orb and go to the fortress of Nero himself. At last, Castilia spoke her mind, and Leon's own thoughts faded away. "Leon, if I am to die in battle, will you burn my body in the sanctuary?" Leon looked at her with a startled expression. She had never talked about the possibility of dying before. He turned his attention to the fire and took off his boots and rubbed his feet before replying. It gave him time to gather his thoughts. "You have 3 more lives you can use and will use. Don't talk of death," he said, more harshly than he had intended to. His friend didn't give the slightest sign that the words hurt to hear. Castilia closed her eyes in frustration. Castilia now also removed her boots and stretched out both her legs and arms. Then she spoke again. "Leon, I know death is hard for you to understand, but it is a possibility. Yes, it's true, I can use my extra lives if I have to, but please, please, my friend, if I do die, will you take me back to the sanctuary? The firewood cracked and burned. It provided much heat. She took hold of his hand to make her point more vividly. He used his he used the hand she wasn't holding and placed it on her hand. He sighed before replying. All right, I swear if you fall in battle, I will take you back to the sanctuary. She nodded. Thank you, she said, as if the weight had been lifted off of her shoulder. I'm sorry. Thank you, she said, as if a weight had been lifted off her chest. There was a silence now between the companions turned friends. Leon reflected on how far they had come, not only physically, but what they had accomplished together. When the silence was Then the silence was broken by a bird's call, but it wasn't a call of a raven or a scavenger bird. The two friends both jumped to their tired feet and looked out cautiously, and both gripped their weapons, ready to strike if need be. Whoa! Don't hurt me! A friendly voice called out. It was someone they had not expected to see. Ripplin, what are you doing here? Leon asked. Then remembering, asked, Prove it! Prove you're Ripplin! The man before him smiled. Oh, I bet your baby water dweller is large and fully grown by now. Eh? Leon relaxed. The two lowered their weapons and let the man into their camp. Once seated, Ripplin spoke. Smart lad you are, asking questions. I'll be. Looks like you are taking good care of your water dweller. He pointed to the massive gator who now had made his way to the horses and was dozing away contentedly. Castilia smiled to herself. Ripplin put his hands near the heat to warm them. Leon offered some food, but he refused. Listen, I want you to know what the rest of the territories and myself are up to. First, some sad news. Starlin has died. He was killed by black magic, he said. He opened his mouth to continue, but Castilia interrupted. We were not far away when he perished by the murderous Nero. I staked my life on that, Castilia said, with frustration evident in her voice. Leon still had a small amount of food in his bowl. He had spied his visitor eyeing it. Leon offered it again to Ripplin, who this time took it and ate. Leon asked his own question. Ripplin, how did you get here, and why are you really here? Ripplin chewed for a long time and swallowed. You know, I have maps of all the territories, but you ain't the only two that can fight. Listen, ever since you found the second orb, Nero's magic prison has been weakened, and I've been gathering beasts like myself that want to help you, not to mention the flyers. Both friends looked at each other, a bit at a loss. I was also assisting Jacob to figure out the code to free the elves, whom all want to be freed and to be willing to join the fight. And Castilia interrupted. Sorry, Ripplin. What was that about Jacob? Ripplin grinned widely at her. Don't fret about him. He told me you'd ask if he was alive or not, and to assure you, he would free the elves soon and join us in the fight against Nero. With that, Ripplin put the empty bowl down and got up from where he had sat down. Well, I'd better be going. Just find the orb on the next hill. There is a temple. It is the most likely hiding place. if you know Starlin the Wizard. Each gave Riplin a warm handshake and hug. They tried to sway Riplin to spend the night, but he said it would be safer if he wasn't there to add to the distraction if something happened. With that, Leon and Castillo watched as the familiar shape of their friend slipped into the shadows of the night. So that is all the chapter for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to continue on your own with this book or along with me, you can find my book on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Apple iBooks, and lots of other places books are sold. And if you are wanting to know more in depth about some of the characters and my writing process, I also have a Facebook page dedicated to all things Legends Orbs of the Elements. I try to write an article Monday through Friday about different topics. I also try to keep them spoiler free as possible. So if you guys are enjoying just listening to the story but want to know more insight into different things, you will not be spoiled. I try to keep it as spoiler free as possible. I just love reading this book to you guys, and like I said, I am so glad that you have joined me in listening in. If you like this video, please give it a big like, subscribe, share with friends and family, and I will see you guys on Monday for another chapter. As they say in my book, may the elements protect you, and I will see you guys Monday for chapter 41. Bye-bye for now, everybody.